I wanted to do a brief video today on Dominic Cummings. He is a UK political advisor and commentariat who participated in the 2019 Tory government as a special advisor to Boris Johnson, and amongst other roles has served in the British Tory governments for the previous decade thereof. He's actually got quite a strong political voice, opinion. He writes a Substack. He has all the general newsletters, etc., that you can sign up to. And I generally find his insights to be of value. And he's a guy who definitely discusses interesting topics, has good parallax on certain foreign issues, as well as underlying currents and trends of particularly the UK political sphere. Now, the biggest issue I have with Dominic is his proximity to power and his understanding of what needs to be done versus what he does. Which is to say that a man who squanders opportunities for change to place his mark down as being principled is one who cares more about perception than reality. This is saying that if you have strong positions, if you want to be a political force, then being an advisor is secondary to being a politician. So the biggest hindrance from a power perspective for Dominic Cummings is Dominic Cummings. He singularly prevents himself from actually influencing politics directly rather than advising, so secondarily, this knock-on effect of his advice towards someone who is in politics and what he probably sees as him as the game master or the chess player, where moving pieces on the board from behind the scenes, power behind the throne, this simulacra of power to one man from another. And he cites one of his, I'd say, esteemed historical figures as Otto von Bismarck. And if you know nothing, but Otto von Bismarck was the Chancellor of Prussia and then the German Empire, the Second Reich, and was able to form the coalition of all these German states into one sole unified Germany. And this idea of Germania and all of these things is born out in his time, in his rule. And the way he was able to go at his political machinations and all of these things was so intricate and so perfectly balanced that it became quite a impressive statesman historically, and that goes for in any time and place. So I think it's notable that Dominic considers him of huge historical importance and preeminence and esteem. But what you might notice is the juxtaposition here of one man of power who sought to unify a idea in reality, incarnate, is to bring Prussia and Germany to the forefront of a political military power. The other guy tried to get the UK to leave the EU. And then from this negative, so the position of leaving something is a negative position. It's not proposing something, it's trying to subtract it out of something, which is fine. It's also a worthwhile pursuit, but it's to say once you stop with the negativity, then you have to revert to positivity to continue momentum politically. And if you don't have anything to establish a vision, a strategy behind, you would think then that you would know you're incapable of actually maintaining power, both conceptually but in reality. And this is the downfall of Dominic Cummings from political positions of power. So his strategic advisory position was cut by Boris Johnson, and then now he's gone off into political exile because his positions are nebulous in a lot of ways. He doesn't necessarily take a political position, whether that's out of cowardice, or I think it's probably a combination of cowardice with a mix of overwrought complexity. It's to say, when you try to use nous to understand instinct, then you have this paralysis of analysis. You refuse to take a position because you find the subject too complex, and or you've abstracted it out of what a real position would look like because you can find faults with it. And that, because there's something where there are misgivings or mistakes with a position, doesn't mean you shouldn't still hold the position politically. There's still a worthwhile point to just maintain on certain policies or on certain ideologies. So, and that's probably the first thing. And then the second thing here is his role is tantamount to being a sage. And if you can see this here in this wheel of Jungian archetypes, you can have something like him as an advisor and a sage, and whereby you have the primacy of knowledge as the basis of your position of your entire being, your station in the state. And he knows this, I think, in that he's pursued roles which have always been advisory roles. He's never actually properly run for political office. And as you see, his physiognomy does not strike you as a leader, but it also just looks a bit more like a mage, like a sorcerer, some position of old, which all at once brings into your mind, constructs this idea of someone who's just an effete advisor. And so when you live into who you are, which is probably what he is doing, it unfortunately cripples you from a how do I become, say, the hero, or how do I become the ruler? It's impossible. You don't have enough of a deportment, or a strong enough deportment, to actually stand there staunchly and starkly and divide a populace and say, look, you're either with me or against me, and here's my position. Now bandwagon or get out of my way. Because when you do that, you create real enemies and real threats, not a nebulous political arena, but and it's also like moot court. And it's also to say his life hasn't been under real threat for any other reasons than, say, like COVID craziness or something. But in general, if you are in a political power, then you risk military intervention via other mechanisms such as war. And politics in general, as we all know, domestic politics is only purposeful to establish international politics, or at least an international diplomacy from that state. That state exists to become a member of the geopolitical arena. You wouldn't, otherwise there's no point in having a state at all. Now, his unfortunate demise from the collective political arena is tantamount, once again, I think, to his cowardice. It's to say his inability to actually take what is an effective position and back himself politically is a character trait or a defect of his being. And that's why I think you can go from admiring a man and his positions intellectually, and he has a lot of nous, and it's not that he's not smart enough to know these things. It's more like, if you're not willing to participate, you're not willing to throw your hat into the arena properly, then why bother at all? Why admire someone like Bismarck and yet do nothing that Bismarck would do? And so that's, I think, my position on Dominic is that for someone who should intellectualize and know all these things when it pertains to power and the rise of strongman politics, why exactly is he absent, but yet still fairly involved from a commentariat perspective? Why is it that he feels the need to involve his ideas but not himself? And this can be seen as I say, once again, that lower level of cowardice and low cunning, whereby we want to interact with the forces at play without endangering ourselves. And so this maybe is even not a rebuke necessarily to Dominic, but maybe an encouragement to step into the arena and actually put yourself in that position, test the water, and then get a conclusive result as to, am I a man who has it in me to be a man of Faustian destiny, or am I basically fated to just be a footnote in the annals of Western history?